Welcome to the T2 Hubcast. Join Martin, Dave, Spencer and guests as they discuss all things personal and professional development. The T2 Hubcast, brought to you by the People Performance People.
So welcome to another T2 Hubcast with me, Martin Johnson, and
Dave Pendleton,
Senior Consultant at T2. So we wanted to jump back on, and we seem to be in the zone at the minute, recording sales-related podcasts, or certainly sales leadership and sales management related podcasts. And we recorded one recently on the Hub. I think it was called The 5 Classic Mistakes That Salespeople Make. And although we were talking around the 5 mistakes salespeople make, we were aiming it at the managers and leaders to try and identify these and work with their salespeople on. So it got us thinking, and Dave and I had a discussion around what if we did a similar type podcast, but the 5 sort of areas of missed opportunities. That's what I'm looking for. The 5 missed opportunities or areas for improvement for sales leaders themselves. Yeah. So what do we observe in great sales leaders and managers? And what do we observe that sometimes it's just a missed opportunity that we're not exploiting that could have a huge impact on the performance of our team and sales performance? So we're going to hit you with 5 things. Dave and I will debate them in usual fashion. And hopefully, over the next 25 minutes or so, you'll be able to take something from it. So, Dave, let's get stuck into it. Number 1, or the first missed opportunity or area of improvement for sales leaders and managers. What do you want to start with?
Well, do you know what? I think this is. I think this would probably be number 1 in most of the areas and topics that we cover at Trans2, and it's coaching.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily specific to sales leaders. I think it's leaders in general. But specifically with sales leaders, the outputs are ever more evident when good quality, specific, successful coaching is implemented in sales teams.
And just to clarify, we observe, don't we, that sales managers get too caught up in managing the management process of metrics, systems, reporting, forecasting, all of that stuff, which is a key element of sales management, but so much so that we don't take time out to truly coach individuals on the inputs necessary to increase all of those things. So I think that's what you're saying, isn't it? Challenge yourself listening to this. Do you manage your team and your managers and your business and your forecast and your pipeline and your metrics, or do you truly take time to coach your people, coach the inputs of your people?
Sure.
And you know what? It's not about just saying, if you're listening to this, well, I do, if my people are struggling, I do tell them what they need to do or where they need to improve, or I do tell them exactly. That's not coaching, right? Coaching is where we are actually collaborating with the individual to understand what they're struggling with and offer insight and guidance as to how they can make the practical changes that will drive the outcomes.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
And we always have an example of this, don't we? The show, participate, observe method, where, I always encourage, certainly in sales leaders, for example, sales meetings is one of the key elements of the sales role. And you can't just have a new starter or a salesperson collect their laptop and mobile phone and off you go to the customer with a couple of days training around the product.
Hit the ground running, you mean?
Yeah, a couple of days training on the product or service, a bit of an onboard, and then you're free to go. Yeah. Coaching or a coaching technique would be to do the show, participate, observe method, where the first 3 meetings you're going to attend with the sales individual and you're going to lead. In fact, they're going to observe. Yeah. You're going to show them how it's done. Once you've done that 3 times over, we're then going to do 3 more meetings, and they're going to be in participation. So I'm going to do 50, you're going to do 50. We're going to share the process. We're going to both contribute. And then lastly, we're going to do another 3 meetings, and I'm going to be quiet and you're going to lead the meeting and I'm going to observe. I'm there to bail you out if you need to be, but I'm sort of observing. And if you did that for 9 meetings, let's say with a salesperson, how much more comfortable and confident and equipped will they be to conduct great sales meetings going forward?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's an example of coaching.
Yeah, it is. And I think, like I say, it's a missed opportunity across most leadership positions. And some of that is because time constraints, the business wants them to continually achieve. So they chase an achievement without understanding what achievement is made of.
Yes.
Achievement is made of having good, strong, successful people who operate in a way that's completely in line with what the business needs and what the outcomes are.
Yeah. And there's various forms of coaching. We haven't got time to go into them all today, but the message we're saying is, number one, sales managers and leaders, are you getting caught up in the management process of your role and reporting and forecasting and systems and CRM, governance and metrics and all of that type of stuff? Or are you taking time to truly coach your individuals on the inputs that they require to improve upon to be able to deliver all of those things for you anyway?
Absolutely. So here's a question, I guess, to the sales leaders that are listening. As the leader, you are ultimately accountable for your team's results. So if the team's results are not where they need to be, is it time to look in a mirror? I think the question is yes.
We'll just share your window mirror analogy, that because I love it. What's the window mirror analogy that? And then sales leaders often fall foul of this.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's I guess it's an age-old analogy that when sharing success, you should always look through the window, because the team are the ones that have helped you achieve success. When something has gone wrong, the first thing you should do is look in a mirror, and that is the mirror window scenario. So look in the mirror when things have gone wrong, see how you could have changed the output and the outcomes, see how you could have affected the inputs. So look at yourself first, and when celebrating success, look at your team.
Yeah, great tip. And if you do that, you won't go too far wrong. And what we mean around looking in the mirror when things go wrong is, are you offering the coaching on point one? Are you doing all you can to give that person the best opportunity of being a success in their role? Cool. Right. Number two. So that's number one. We've covered coaching. Number two, what's your number two observation around quite often a missed opportunity of sales leaders and managers?
Yeah, I think an assumption, and rightly so in some examples and with some people, but an assumption, I guess, often made by sales leaders is that their salespeople are in a sales role because they want to earn fortunes and money is the motivator and the main driver as to them being there. And as we've spoke about in earlier podcasts, we know for a fact that not all salespeople become salespeople because they want to. Some people fall into being a salesperson.
You always say that, don't you? Nobody ever leaves school at 16 and says, "I want to be a salesperson."
It's a bit like a training guy, right?
Yeah, a bit like us. It's never a career anybody sets out on. But I guess you make a valid point there. There is also an assumption that all salespeople are motivated by money. It's not the case. In fact, it's not the case in many cases. So for a lot of people, the money and the commissions and the rewards are the byproducts of the success.
Sure.
But the actual motivators and the drivers can be career progression. I want to be the next leader. It can be, I want to prove something to my children. I want to provide. It can be, I like the limelight and the reward and of being the number one salesperson on the floor. But it can be for some just that they believe so much in the products and service and company that and what it does, and the fact that it might make a difference to others, that they feel passionate about selling it.
It truly helps them.
And being an ambassador for it. So everybody's motivators are different. Don't assume as a sales leader or manager that they are motivated purely by money.
That's right.
And that's what you're saying. You've got to understand what they're motivated by.
Sure.
Awesome. Number three, third tip on what leaders need to sort of be conscious of or be aware of that they may be missing as an opportunity.
Well, we ask this question all the time in leadership days and sales leadership days. The question is, how often do you celebrate success with your team? And we often are hit with a sea of blank faces in terms of, not very often because we're too busy chasing the white rabbit. And that is tip number three for me. And again, this spans across all leaders rather than just sales leaders, but this is the podcast today. So actively seek out reasons to celebrate individual and team success, because those people who are not necessarily motivated purely and solely by money will enjoy it, and they will be motivated by certain levels of recognition, depending on the type of recognition it is. And you can only do that as a leader if you actively seek out those opportunities to do so.
Yeah, we get caught up in sales at times, don't we, where you have a fantastic month or quarter and people have really put in the hard work and we've turned it around, or we've finished on a positive, or we've done some great things. And it's like a little bit of a phew. We got there. and then the next day, the next quarter starts, and it's put to bed, and we move on. And for some people who have really, worked hard over that period of time and exhausted themselves, to then feel like it is not recognized or rewarded, and we're now going again, it can be demoralizing at times. So what we're saying is, are we truly taking the time at a manager level or a leader level to, and it's not even sometimes about the organizational initiatives of quarterly awards and bonus schemes. It's about
big parties or, huge celebrations like that at all.
What are you doing as a manager to make sure you recognize from the smallest level to the biggest deal and the great things your people are doing, so it doesn't go unnoticed? And that's what great leaders do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Recognize and reward. I always tell a story of one of the greatest managers I work for, a Spanish lady called Maite Roel. I often say, Dave, don't I, that the top sort of 3 managers I've ever worked for have been women.
Yeah.
But Maite was really memorable. And one of the questions she asked me when I first met her, and I went into her team, and I thought it was going to be the usual sales, meet the new manager one-to-one, what your targets, what your accounts, what's your forecast for the first month. And it was none of that. She was very different. And she asked me a question which was quite left field, but she said, if you achieve something substantial or of note, who is the first person you would want to know? Or who's the first person you'd want to share it with? And I sort of looked at her with a bit puzzled, but she said, stay with me. I'm asking for a reason. So I said, well, my wife. And I gave her a reason as to why. And we said no more about it. Anyway, I was in her team for a few years, and it was only about 15 months since that conversation, about 15 months later, that I had a particularly great quarter, and I finished number 1 in Europe, and I was up for an award. And it was It took 15 months. Yeah, it took 15 months. Yeah, yeah. And it was one of those where I had to go up on stage and get an award. Now, you know me, Dave. My motivators. You wouldn't enjoy that at all. My motivators. I was looking forward to it, right? Because I like being in the limelight at times. But I came out of that sort of that conference, that awards quarterly awards ceremony, and I got in the car on the way home. I'd not had a chance to ring my wife, but she called me, and she said, "Congratulations on your award." And I said, "How the hell do you know?" And she said, "Well, Maite called me last night." So my boss called her the night before to let her know that I was going to receive a quite prestigious award the next day, not to tell me, but she said that what she'd uncovered with me is that the most important person who should be notified in the case of any achievement should be my wife. So Maite took the time out to thank her for her supporting me, to tell her what an asset I was to the team and what I'd achieved. And it was a great achievement. And you know what? I'll never forget it. No. And I'm not saying that people listening to this have to do that. Because if you say to some people in your team, what's your wife's name and phone number, they'll probably tell you to go away. But the point is what can you do to make sure that the little things or the big things are appropriately rewarded and recognized, and then we celebrate the successes of the team members, because that will motivate them to go again.
Absolutely will.
Cool. Number 4. So that's 3 tips. We've done think about coaching, not just management. We've done about understanding people's motivators at a deep level, and we've talked about celebrating success. So number 4, next tip.
Number 4 is truly understand the competencies that are needed to achieve what you want your team members to achieve.
Love it. Right. So this arguably for me is the most underutilized part of sales managers' roles in organizations. Quite often we're going ahead, managing teams and trying to drive outputs, but with no real clarity or idea of the specific type of competencies that our salespeople need to execute on the inputs in order to achieve that. Now, at this point, I want to signpost listeners to the Hub. We have a sales competency framework toolkit in the Hub that managers can use. And this is a result of 2 years of work that Dave and I put in when we were observing the 16 universal competencies of salespeople. Now, every sales environment's different, it's worth mentioning. And some industries are different to others depending on the products and services you sell in, etc. But we have found 16 universal competencies that doesn't matter what you sell in, should be relevant to all sales roles. Now, these are broken down into 4 categories: skills, traits, process, and knowledge. But there's 16 individual competencies that we believe if you can start to assess your salespeople against them, give them a score out from 1 to 4 levels, 4 being expert, 1 being awareness.
Yep.
So you've got awareness, working, practitioner, expert, so
Yep.
they can move up the 4 levels of competency on each of them. If you could do that on the 16 universal ones, then you will end up with a bit of a spider chart or a diagram and some gap analysis around what that individual does really well, but what competencies they need to improve upon.
Absolutely.
And that's what you're talking about. If you do that, you have a much better chance of executing the coaching and the development and the support for that person, which is going to make a difference for them. The sales will come as a result.
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned there about, understanding gaps and being able to coach and train appropriately according to people's gaps. But it also gives the leader a really good understanding of success and what success looks like. And for those people in the team that are achieving consistent success, how are they achieving consistent success?
Yeah.
And how can I model that and help other people get involved in a similar model to help them succeed as well?
Yeah. So if you've got 15 salespeople in your team, you go to our toolkit on the hub. You have some very easy templates to follow and fill in, right?
Yeah.
And what you're saying is, if you do the first round of assessment on all 15 salespeople, not only will you find the gaps at an individual level for each person, but if you take your top 5 salespeople in the team by number, by sales figures, and you look at what is the commonalities, what are the common denominators of these 5 people? Where are they hot on the competency framework?
Sure.
And if those 5 salespeople are all scoring highly on the human element, the traits, the characteristics, the behaviors they display, then you want to map that and replicate that for future hiring purposes, to work with the rest of the team. So it actually gives you some analysis and data. And you know what? The same for the lowest performing. If you look at your bottom 3 salespeople, are they all struggling in certain areas? So we would, I think, implore you at this point to check out the sales competency framework on the hub. Look at the 4 categories and the 16 universal competencies of great salespeople. Look at the templates and start filling in a scoring system on the 4 levels for each person on the 16 competencies. And just what you'll get with the tool is you'll get a spider diagram of showing where they are strong today and where their areas to build on are. And just start the process, because it'll allow you to start focusing on increasing the competencies which are going to deliver your results, rather than blindly trying to do what you think is right or
absolutely,
focus on areas.
Yeah. I think where that really helps is to find the method, I guess, the way to achieve selling this product in this environment, in this business, to these customers.
Yeah.
Because I think that lots of organizations and sales organizations, particularly, are fairly guilty. You mentioned recruitment just a minute ago. In recruiting new people based on previous results on a CV that may or may not be truthful.
Usually not.
May or may not be.
Or maybe slightly elevated.
Potentially.
Slightly embellished.
I mean, salespeople are very good with numbers, right? So may or may not be accurate and correct. So they're recruited based on, I guess, a picture and some knowledge of transferable skills. They're brought into a new role, maybe given a day or two, some form of induction, and then they are expected to fill in the gaps.
Yeah.
And this is where the disparity comes, I think, between the levels of salespeople, the levels of success, the levels of knowledge, and the levels of ability to achieve. So if you've got everybody fitting into the same competency framework, and you know exactly what the levels of input are required on each competency area, out the four areas, and exactly what type of people we're looking for, and we can measure that on a regular basis, we're going to almost create our own formula for success.
Yeah. And therefore the competency framework toolkit becomes your guide for hiring, for developing, for retaining, for promoting, for exiting people based on, and don't forget, we've already done 2 or 3 years worth of research on the 16 universal competencies of salespeople. So you don't know. But what some clients do is they add their own, because every organization is different. You might have some of your own behavioral competencies that you want to add to the tool, but feel free to do that. But when you're deciding on what it looks like, you've got a consistent way of coaching, developing, measuring, rewarding, promoting, hiring great talent into your team. So check that out, because I think it will really help you out in terms of assessing your team today, understanding individual gaps, but almost finding what the common denominators are of the successful salespeople. What do they possess that is driving those sales results today?
Correct.
Cool. Number 5, last tip for leaders and managers.
This one is all around communication. It's something we observe on a daily basis. I'm sure you'll absolutely agree that lots and lots of people have the belief that, you've heard the saying many times that I deal with people the way I like to be dealt with. Yeah. Well, you yourself have got a response to that. I've got a slightly different response, but it means the same thing.
Yeah.
We think it's nonsense. We think those days are well past and long gone.
Yeah. And that old adage of treat people how you would like to be treated.
Yeah.
And all the work we do, there's one consistent theme through anything we ever do, from the personal development, the psychometric testing, the leadership stuff. It is treat people how they would like to be treated. Get into other people's worlds.
Yeah,
be the social chameleon. It doesn't mean, some people challenge me on this, Dave, and they say, Martin, but is that not being yourself? And I say, if you're trying to be too much to too many people, is that not, do you lose your authenticity, or do you lose who you are? And I say, well, no, because what we're saying is be yourself and understand yourself and know yourself. But know where it is situationally appropriate to take a step in a direction which is not natural to you, but will absolutely allow you to connect with somebody else. Sure, and that's what we're saying.
Yeah, I often use the analogy, because I've also had the same challenge. I often use the analogy to explain it very simply, that if you imagine a square room, you're in one corner and I'm in the opposite corner. And when we start an interaction, we start to deal with each other. Basically, we're taking steps forward towards each other to a point where we touch and shake hands. That's where success is. Now, whether I come closer to you or you come closer to me, it is almost irrelevant.
As long as you meet.
As long as we meet.
Yeah.
And as long as it's not right in my corner, and as long as it's not right in your corner, because in either scenario, it's going to be too self-sacrificing for me or too self-sacrificing for you.
Yes.
And that's where it becomes frustrating and conflict is going to arise.
So as long as we feel that there is movement in some direction, but we are finding a common ground, not the middle ground.
Doesn't have to be the middle ground.
No. A common ground, then that's the art of great connections and relationships. Correct. I love that. I love that, because sales managers and leaders too often lead with their natural style. This is the type of sales manager I am.
Yeah, you come to me.
I'm an autocratic. I drive numbers. I measure outputs. If you do the business and you hit your numbers, you'll have an easy time. If not, I'm going to come crashing down. Or you'll get the sales manager wants to be everybody's friend, and they'll rely on the social elements. But when they struggle to crack the whip and drive the agency when they need to, the art of it is be who you are, but understand where it's appropriate to step in the direction. So for me as a salesperson, when I was a salesperson, I'm quite a driver, as you know. So I'm very no detail.
Do I know?
Yeah. No detail, but I'm a visionary. I'm a goal-driven, target-driven person. I want to move fast, right? So if you're a sales manager communicating to me, you can afford to be going, listen, Martin, here's where you are. Here's where I need you to be. Mm-hmm. By this point, have you got me covered? And I'm quite okay with that. I just give me that and let me run. Whereas we've got a wonderful person who works with us, Claire, who does all our account management and sales. She's a more amiable character. She's a more peace and harmony person. She doesn't like that directive, driving pace, being over excessive on the message. So with Claire, she would respond unfavorably to that because it would put her under pressure. She'd feel uncomfortable. She would withdraw. So what we're saying is, as a sales manager, you've got to be a social chameleon. You've got to be yourself and be authentic, but understand your people. And everything you was talking about earlier, if you understand their motivators and their personality styles and what they're rewarded and fulfilled by, take the step in the right direction. Yeah. And it will always serve you well.
I think the key message is not change your communication style, adjust it.
Just adjust and adapt.
That's it.
And get in other people's world.
Turn the volume up and down. That's it. Very simple.
If you've got somebody who you can crack the whip with and be straight down the line with and they respond well, do it. If you've got someone who you've maybe got to take in a side room and have a bit more of an open conversation and ask them their opinion, then do it.
Absolutely.
Cool.
And know which ones is which.
So let's go through them 5 very quickly and wrap it up. Number 1, tip is coaching. Don't
Yes.
get caught up in sales management and metrics and forecasting and all the other administration and process-driven duties we've got to do as a manager. Take time to coach your people. Number 2, motivators. Understand at a deeper level what motivates your people, what their unconscious motivators are. It's not always money and financial.
Absolutely.
It can be many other things. Number 3, celebrate success.
Yeah.
Don't move from quarter to quarter, month to month without taking time to make your people feel like they've been successful and been rewarded and you've celebrated it.
Yeah.
Number 4, sales competence is really important one. There's a toolkit on the hub for you to use. We've put 2 years of research and hard work into it. You can have it, right? You can use it. Start scoring your people against the 16 universal competencies of sales. Feel free to add your own in there. But either way, start understanding where the gaps are at an individual level to be able to increase those inputs.
Yep.
And finally, communication. Don't be a one-size-fits-all. Don't just think that all of your natural persona and personality style is going to land right with everybody. Be yourself, be authentic, but understand where it's right to step in the right direction to get the best out of another person. And I think if you do even 2 or 3 of those 5 things, then you'll start to see you'll be showing more leadership and you'll start to drive the collective output of the people around you.
Absolutely.
Cool. Awesome. Well, 25 minutes is up, Dave. I think we've been bang on time.
I think so.
Thanks for that. Enjoyed that as always. And we'll be back again, no doubt, with more content on the Hubcast.
See you soon.
Cheers, Dave.